We are leaning in. If you've been with us, we are in a series that we've called Moving Home. And the idea is this, that we're already not yet. That from Scripture's perspective and from the view of the entirety of the story arc, the end is accomplished. The end is not something that is up for debate. And so we've kind of taken this moment to go, okay, how does the book fit together? Because where we sit is in this tension of the end is written, but we're not there yet. And so it's already not yet. And so if you were here over the past few weeks, you know we started out talking about home, and home specifically being a place where God created. He puts the first humans. He creates a space that has everything they will need, and he gives them a choice. He takes people and he puts them in a place and he gives them a purpose. And that purpose is simply this, that I've given you everything you need to step in and have purpose within your life. And that purpose being that you would reign, that you would walk alongside me, that you would love me. And so there's these people in a place and they have a specific purpose. And we know that they make a choice. God gives them everything they want. Pick any tree. You can eat of anything you want, but just not this, and they choose to do it. And so we know they begin to run away. And as they run away, God begins to use different individuals in that time of humanity running away, one being Noah. And he uses Noah specifically to go, man, Noah, you are in a specific time and place because I need to rescue and preserve humanity through you. And so carry on from there, you get to a group of people where God collects a nation. He starts with Abraham and begins to work through Abraham, saying, I'm going to bless all people through you. And he collects this nation, and he begins to work through people like Moses and Joseph. He begins to work through kings, and he begins to work through prophets to begin to point forward, going, there is a time coming when God himself is going to show up to rescue humanity in the person of Jesus. And so last week we talked extensively about who is Jesus and how does he fit into all of this? What does redemption look like? What does saving grace look like? And so coming out of that, then we realize that when God rescues us, and we're going to celebrate this today, but when God rescues us, he places us into a family. A lot of the early writers catch this. They begin to call each other brothers and sisters. You get to John, who walked alongside Jesus, who pens it down. He goes, now we are the family of God. He says right up front when he's explaining who Jesus is, that we would be the children of God someday. And so those that have entered by faith in Jesus, we get called family. And God is taking this family, what we call the church, right? That isn't an organization. It's a group of people that God has rescued, that he's put in a specific place at a specific time for a specific purpose. And we're going to talk about that purpose and how that plays out even more today. But ultimately, we know that what God is doing is he is redeeming and restoring all things. That what he intended way back at the beginning, he is putting back together. That we would be with him, dwell with him, that we would be home where we were intended to be with him. We're going to take, because of the amount of celebration we have today, we have baptisms. We have like 30 people so far, and that number could grow. Yeah. You may be sitting here and you're like, every time this happens, I should do it, and I talk myself out of it. Today's your day to talk yourself into it, okay? If you're here and you go, man, I feel like as a member of the family, I need to do this, then 12 o'clock today, you can still do it. We have a way for you to do that, and there's people you can chat with in the lobby, and we can get you set up, and you can enter the waters at 12 o'clock. But 30 people, we have Prescott Valley news that we're going to talk about later in the service. But we have to frame all of this up because all of this belongs inside of God's story. All of this belongs inside of what God's been up to through humans for a long time. It's not unique to us. And in fact, Jesus with the early family, so Jesus, he goes to the cross, he dies, he's put in a tomb, he rises again, and then he begins to show up to different groups of people. But specifically, he spends time with his disciples, the ones that were closest to him. And he takes 11 of them, and he essentially gives us, through them, our purpose. Because we are a people. We are the family of God. But we are a people in a specific place. We exist in a specific town, a geographical location. But God has a specific purpose for us as a family. And it's caught all the way back with the early family. It says this in Matthew 28 and verse 18. Then Jesus came to the 11 disciples and said, all authority in heaven and on earth has been given to me. Okay, if we step back to last week of who Jesus is, we know that Jesus is God. And at this point, Jesus is reaching into the authority that he has, and he is essentially about to give it to the family. That he is about to empower the family. He is taking what he has been given from the authority standpoint, and he's now looking at us, the family, specifically through these 11 at first, going, hey, now I'm passing this on to you. This is what I want you to do. I am empowering you to do this. Verse 19, therefore, go and make disciples. Therefore, go. That word go has this connotation that as you are going, right? As you are moving through life, but it carries a little bit more intentionality with it. That it's not only as you are moving through life, but as you move intentionally through your life. That life's not just happening to you, but you are happening to life. The expectation on the family is that we would be a group of people that are living our lives on purpose, and one of those purposes that we move and exist with is that we actually go, as we move, we do it with intentionality. We do it with a purpose. And specifically, he says the purpose being go and make disciples. You could write underneath that, this is the what, right? This is the what of the family. What is the family supposed to do? What is part of our purpose? What is our purpose? Is to go and make disciples. Now, make disciples is interesting because if you put it in biblical terms, when Matthew is writing this as one of the disciples later, as he's retracking back through the life of Jesus and he's writing this, what he's getting at is that there was a time and a place where he was made a disciple. And what's fascinating is if you take the concept of make disciples, you cannot make disciples if you are not a disciple. And so the reality is that each of us that are part of the family that have been walking, we have been following Jesus. The idea is do for someone else what Jesus has done for you. That's making disciples. Do for someone else what Jesus has done for you. In the context of Matthew's interesting because Matthew didn't start out in a space where he should be writing one of the gospel accounts, one of the life accounts of Jesus. Matthew's original name was Levi. Levi, if you step back into the nation, Levi was a tribe, part of that nation. His name has rich heritage to the nation itself, to a specific group of people, the priests. And so Levi is the one now as Matthew writing this, right? But for Levi, here's what it meant, that at some point, Levi decided, I'm going to give up my heritage and I'm going to go step into this role of a tax collector. Now, tax collector to us doesn't mean a whole lot, but in those days, a tax collector was an office of Rome, and specifically, it was hated by everybody but the tax collector. Even Rome hated it. Because here's what would happen. If you were a tax collector, you basically had to buy that role. The way you bought that role is you would more than likely mortgage or sell land that you had been given. And so what happens is now you are, for an Israelite to sell part of the promised land, you were giving up your heritage to step into this role of tax collector. But in the role of tax collector, what it meant that you could do is it meant that you had a quota that Rome needed, so you would charge the tax to the people. Remember now, Levi is of the nation. He is an Israelite, and he is now sitting in a Roman office taking taxes from other Israelites. On top of that, he would take a portion for himself. And Rome didn't care. As long as they got their quota, Levi, the tax collector, could charge his fellow Israelites whatever they wanted, whatever he wanted. And so tax collectors became very, very, very rich through extortion. And so what would happen is it didn't take long for tax collectors to be hated by their own people. You had sold your land, you had stepped in to support the empire, the enemy, and on top of that, you're now taking money from us for yourself. You're selfish. So everything about a tax collector was hated. Everything about a tax collector was an outcast. Everything about a tax collector was on the outside. And Levi is sitting at his tax booth going over his ledger one day, and Jesus shows up, and Jesus goes, "Hey, Levi, follow me." And Levi, who became Matthew, that is writing this for us today, got up and followed Jesus. And now Levi, Matthew, is the one writing, "Go and do for others what's been done for you." What had Jesus done for Levi? You're an outcast. No one likes you. You're hated. You're the lowest of the low. You don't deserve a thing when it comes to religion and God. And Jesus shows up and he goes, "Hey, you're my kind of guy. Come follow me." Go, family. The call on us is that we would go and we would do for others what's been done for us. And then it specifically tells us who? Of all nations. Of all nations. That word nation is ethnos, which is all people groups with a distinct culture and a distinct geographical location. That we would go and we would do for others all over the planet what's been done for us. This is why this story is so important, that we understand the journey of how we got to Jesus and the difference that Jesus makes in us as a family. We have to understand it. We have to grasp it. Why? Because if we don't, we will never step into the potential and the purpose that God has given us. And God has told us, as you go, as you move with intention, to all the nations, make disciples of all the nations. How? So if that's the who, the what and the who, here's the how. Baptizing them in the name of the Father and of the Son of the Holy Spirit, and teaching them to obey everything I commanded you, and surely I am with you always to the very end of the age. Hey, church, as you go and you make disciples, baptize them. Why baptize? Think about it for a second. You start the New Testament and there's this guy, John the Baptist, and John the Baptist is there in the river, and people are leaving their old religion to come and go, "I believe the Messiah is coming, and you can baptize me," and I'm identifying with the Messiah that's coming. I'm rejecting this old religion and I'm stepping into the new. Jesus comes along and John baptizes him. We as a family get baptized and enter the waters. Why? Because we are identifying and saying, "I believe Jesus, I believe what has happened is true, and today I choose to go into these waters to identify with him in his death, burial, and resurrection, to declare for all time that I am part of the family, that I'm identifying with the family." And as I identify with the family, guess what? We have a call on our lives to go and do for others what's been done for us. To identify them with the family through the waters of baptism. By the way, if you're here and you're like, "I don't know if I should do this or not. I was baptized as a baby. I was sprinkled." Here's the thing. This is a choice that you make because you made a choice to follow Jesus, not a choice that someone else made for you. This is a choice you make. The word baptize is baptizo, which has to do with to wash head to toe under the water, to dip, ceremonially coming out, identified with Jesus. On top of that, it says, teaching them to obey everything I've commanded you. If you turn to John chapter 13, verse 34. So he says, teach them everything I've commanded you. You know what's fascinating? Jesus only gives one command. And it's a new one. A new command I give you, love one another as I have loved you. So you must love one another. By this, everyone will know that you are my disciples if you love one another. A new command. And this is the same group of disciples that he's giving the command to. Later in Matthew, he says, hey, this is what I want you to teach them. Obey everything I've commanded. What has he commanded? He's commanded one thing. When he talks about love God and love people, he's answering what the law was. He's summarizing it. Now he gets to this point, the night before he's about to be betrayed. And in this moment, what does he tell them? He goes, hey, a new command I got for you. Family, this is the marker. This is what we look like. This is what we exist inside of. That we love one another. And if we do that, everyone will know. Everyone will know that you're my disciple. If you love one another. And so there's a question we're going to resonate with today. What does love require of you today? As a family member, what does love require of you today? In this moment, I believe that love requires of us that we would celebrate like it's us getting in the tub, because we know what this means. That when we talk about Prescott Valley a little later in the service, I believe every single one of us that believes we are part of the family, that man, there's a call on us. What does love require of me for others? And how does God want to use me to be a part of making disciples, of doing for others what's been done for me? And so we're going to start this thing off. You ready? We're going to start it off with some celebration. All right? We're going to start it off with some baptisms. Because as a family, what we do is we go and we do for others what's been done for us. We make disciples. Where? Of everywhere. Today it's here. Specifically in baptizing. So would you welcome Mr. Hoyt as we celebrate together? Oh man. Does it get any better? Like than seeing witness in front of you, life change. To see people step in and the two songs we sang, but especially catching that idea of waymaker and people going, God has made a way for me. And I want you to know about it. His name is Jesus. It's special. It's special. And also special is the conversation we need to have for the next 15, 20 minutes. Because it is massive in the life of the church. It's massive in our family. We were chatting this week as staff and just the recognition that families are designed to grow, right? Families are meant to grow. And for us, we probably about 6.5 years ago, I can remember sitting at a retreat. And at that retreat, there was this 2020 vision that came out of it. And we at the time were like, oh man, 2020 is so far away. It's like a whole 5 years. And I remember that feeling like, man, we're so far out on this thing, but we just knew that God was calling us as a family to northern Arizona, specifically First Step, Prescott Valley. And we knew to do that, there were some things we had to do here. And so those of you that have been on that journey, you've seen this room transform. The lobby didn't look like it used to. The coffee shop wasn't there. I mean, you've seen multiple things happening here. And you've heard about this nebulous like Prescott Valley thing, right? And through the years, I think it was about 3 years ago, we got to go, man, we have a location, right? We think we've got it. And then leases were signed and we were like, okay, we're going. And God went, no, you're not. And we're like, okay, cool. We have a building. We don't know what we're doing, right? But God's goodness, we got to make sure that through this conversation that just like we were talking about earlier, where we look at the whole story and what God's up to, and he's the one writing it. That with Prescott Valley, what's a relief to me, if I'm really honest, what's an absolute relief to me, is that we're not writing the story. Because if we were, we would have opened as a pandemic started. Praise God, we didn't open as a pandemic started. And if we would have stepped in then, who knows where we would be now. But watching God provide, not only in that way, but also in this whole conversation way of going, hey, how do we love well in Prescott Valley? What does love require of the Heights family in Prescott Valley? And in fact, it was kind of this conversation that went along the lines of like, hey, we actually have neighbors there. Here's what I mean. We have a video that those of you that don't know where the campus is, it's an old Albertsons. But I want you to look in the background. There are neighbors that could throw rocks and hit our building. So we better be nice, right? But the location is embedded in community. And it was as we were going through this journey through financing and continuing to sit before the Lord, and the elders are sitting before the Lord and they're processing, and the staff is, that this question began to brew. What do our neighbors need? What are the community needs? And what would it look like for us to love well in that space? For us to do what love requires of us as a family in that space? And we began to hear back from people. Man, Prescott Valley, 1 in 5 families live below poverty. But you boil that down further and you actually discover that 40% of kids under the age of 5 in families are below the poverty line in Prescott Valley. That creates a whole set of needs wrapped around how do you get care for specifically 0 to 5? How do you get care that is safe, that is affordable, and that is sustainable? Because more than likely that means both parents got to work outside of the house. And all of a sudden we started to realize that the stress load on young families in Prescott Valley, we started to go, man, there's a weight here that we haven't put into account. Because I'll be honest with you, the first set of plans were awesome. Because it looked just like this campus, only in one building. And it was like, oh man, I can't wait. You walk in and it feels the same. And so whether you drive the extra 15 minutes or not, you're gonna walk in and go, oh, this is Heights. That's for us. That makes us feel good. That makes me feel good. That makes me feel comfortable. And when we started to wrestle with, man, this weight that families are feeling, God, how do you want to use us to love well into that context? How do you want to use us? Because we're a people, right? And we're in a specific place and we're going. Because as you go with intentionality, as you get there, when you get there, be very specific to make disciples. And what does that look like in this context? It looks much different than here. And so we started asking questions. Well, what else? Well, 3 out of 4 don't go to church. More than likely, 3 out of 4 people, 75% of Prescott Valley don't know Jesus. Man, that hurts. Especially on a day like today. We can do something about that, family. We can go and love well. The reality that for these young families that more than likely don't know Jesus but are struggling to make ends meet, and the stresses are on top of them, so they're doing it without Jesus. Then on top of that, if you add up the cost of any kind of care, you're talking, when it adds up over a year, it's the same price as in-state tuition. The average price of preschool in our state is the same price as in-state tuition for ASU. And we want families to survive. And then you start to talk to the library staff and the mayor, and you begin to talk to the Prescott Valley PD, and what you begin to hear is school gets out, but both parents are working, so now you got middle schoolers and high schoolers that have nowhere to go. So they go to spaces that they only know where to go, which is like the library and other places. And teenagers, no offense y'all, you're beautiful, but teenagers are creative in how to get into trouble. And God made them that way. Right? And so they need help steering, and they need things created for them. And so we began to realize in talking to the PD and the library that, man, there's some real community issues going on in that space. And then on top of that, we began to realize that, man, there's some real simple kind of education needs that if we could be a part of helping solve, it would mean I wouldn't say the world, but it'll help immensely in the struggle that people are facing. And so you begin to go, okay, we're a people who God has put here, specifically here. We're a family, and we have a mission. We're going to make disciples, but making disciples in Prescott Valley, as we began to process this, going, man, we would be tone deaf to roll out the plans that we originally made, because that was all about us and not about the community. And so we went back to the drawing board. We took a trip to Michigan literally a week before COVID hit and saw a church there that's doing some phenomenal stuff and answering some of these questions in their own neighborhoods of Michigan and Ann Arbor. And so we came back and chatted with elders and senior leadership team and staff and began to go back and go, I think God's calling us to redesign this thing completely different, because the community needs it. And so we did this. This is the overview of the building. And just so you get a perspective of, it's roughly 44,000 square feet. If this gives you any help, all of the buildings on this campus combined don't equal 44,000. So it's bigger space. And so we just started looking at, okay, if we just take it as an open space, because it's an old grocery store, what could we do inside of that? And so in the middle, we put a lobby. Why? Because as a church family, we want to be as welcoming as possible. We want to be hospitable. We want to be known for being hospitable. We have a value that we hold, that we are hospitable to all, that everyone is welcome. And so this space being designed for community to be able to come in on the weekend and spend time. Couple that with, there's a kids area. Why? Because kids are the future. Kids ministry, if you do not invest in the kids ministry, if we do not as a family put them first, the church will die. I've had this firsthand. I watched the church I grew up in struggle immensely because there wasn't not only like people were investing, but there was no emphasis put into kids ministry. There was no emphasis put into youth ministry. And the church in England, I literally am watching church after church that I attended week after week. I was the youngest person by 20 years. And I think I was like maybe 16 at the time. 20, 30 years, depending on which church you went. Youth is vital. So having a youth area created, worship, obviously, we have a worship space created. Sorry, I missed facilities. Facilities, you are amazing. Can we give facilities a hand? They make sure all of this works. But if we are going to be hospitable, we have to have a space where we can have the equipment that's needed to keep things the way they should be, and that's the facilities area. Worship is there, connected, designed for the church family to meet on the weekends, and then there is a hospitality space and cafe. Grafted will be actually located there, open here on weekends, but open there throughout the week. So that's a shift going on. But this is the weekend setup. Sounds like a church, right? Got everything we need to do everything we need to do. Agreed? Now let me show you about the other 6 days a week. That middle becomes a park. Yes, you heard me right. It is a park. When you walk through the door, it's one of my favorite parts, you guys. When you walk through the door, there are going to be 3 playgrounds. Why 3? 1 with a half wall, so that if you're a working parent, because in PV we know what? More than likely, both parents are working, trying to make it. You can come, put your kid inside the half wall, get a cup of coffee, and sit and work for a couple of hours, and you don't have to worry about your kid getting outside of the wall because there's a half wall that you can play in. So all of a sudden, during the week now, the person that's working can show up and be there. The other parks are designed for, moms, dads that want to look after their kid and get out of the house but go to a safe spot. Half the year here, it's really, really nice. The other half the year, it's cold, windy, or it's really hot. This space is climate controlled where you can come and be a part of a family and step into this, get to know people within the church, because we'll have these things called hosts. You guys, this is so exciting. You ready? Hosts literally walk around, and their only job all day, they don't get paid for it, serve teams, walk around all day, and their only job is, hi, we're really glad you're here. Anything we can do for you? We just want you to know you're loved. All day long, right? Who knows where those conversations go? Quick story that I don't have time for, but you got to hear it. So when we were in Michigan, one of these hosts, because it was a similar setup, one of these hosts came along and said, said, I had this conversation. I saw somebody who was in need and they looked distressed and they were sitting in our coffee shop. I went over to them and just said, hey, how are you doing today? Could I pray for you? And the person broke down and said, I just was told across the street, because there was a hospital, I was just told that I have cancer and I don't have anybody to go to. Y'all, how beautiful, how beautiful. So the park is designed for community to exist. Along with the park, next to it, we're putting a preschool. That same area that's kids' men on the weekend, we're putting a preschool. Some people are extremely excited about preschool. We are too. Preschool is designed around how do we meet those needs? If these needs that the community is telling us, the mayor's telling us, and so on, and there's multiple layers to community leaders that have spoken, how do we meet that? This is a very practical way that we can step in and be a part of helping raise the community's kids. This is generational impact. Generational impact. Along with that, then the youth area becomes an after school and then also classes. And so the idea behind that is with the after school, we don't know what that fully looks like yet because we're not clear on what the needs are. But the idea would be that a safe space post-school that teens can come and feel welcome and have a space that they can land and know that, man, we're going to help them stay out of trouble because they're really creative. So we're going to help them be creative in other ways. And so along with that, facilities will still be there because to host all of this, we have to be immensely hospitable and we need a lot of setup, tear down. Along with that, then, the worship center is a gym multi-purpose room. This is where it's going to grate. I'm going to be honest, family. This is where it's going to grate on us. You know why? Because hopefully Prescott Valley doesn't have any flat floor gym space available for open play. But if we create some leagues, all of a sudden, men that don't go to church will show up to play ball. And they may just show up on a Saturday to play ball or a Friday night. And I don't know if you know this or not, but when men play ball, they smell. And now imagine you walk in Sunday morning, smells like somebody played ball. And the guy sitting next to you is like, I've never been to church, but I play ball here. How good is that? Come on. Multi-purpose, it can be used for whatever we need it, whether it's part of the after school. I mean, there's just all kinds of ways we can do it if we don't set it up like this. Nothing wrong with this. This is beautiful. We're going to keep doing this. But in this space, it needs to be something different. Along with that, then, I mentioned grafted. Grafted takes that front area. But you notice how those blue next to the preschool, you got those blue? Those are three things. Or two things. Those are classrooms. The idea behind classrooms is that grafted will host all of the adult education stuff. Why grafted? Because grafted is the front door through community. And now if a church is putting on a finance class, I don't know, I don't really trust churches, but a coffee shop is doing this because it's good for the community and it's connected to the library because the library is hosting it there. And now all of a sudden we've got this community sense going on. What happens is it's a very easy step in for people. Again, we're just making easy step-ins where we get to love. What does love require of us? Love requires that we sacrifice what we want for what the community needs. And that's actually our mission, because in that process, they will know we're disciples. And all we'll do is do for them what Jesus has done for us. With this, y'all, I would say drum roll, but we only got keys. There is a man I need you to say thank you to if you see him today. Pastor Bill, I kid you not, you guys, he has worked for years, not months, years, so that what happened on Saturday could happen. Contracts were signed. This is happening. This is happening. Contract, building, construction, we know how that goes, but they have a deadline. And that deadline is mid-December. We're going to try and hold them to that, which means we can launch in January, Lord willing, right? January 2022, we're stepping in. But here's what we came to realize. Some of you are like, I've heard this, John. Why are we doing this on a Sunday morning? You guys, COVID has done some really difficult things and some really beautiful things. One of the difficult things is we've watched family members leave. Family members who were heavily invested in seeing this happen. And we watched a whole bunch of new people come and join our family that are like, I've had this question. Are we leaving this campus to go to a different one in Prescott Valley? Like, we just haven't talked about it. We just haven't given step-in moments. We haven't given opportunities. And so today, here's what this is. We wanted you to know contracts are signed. We're heading towards January. You're going to hear a whole lot about this. We're building serve teams over the summer. We're launching some really cool stuff. You didn't hear it from me, but potentially in the fall, a Saturday night service. Okay. Just seeing how many Saturday night peeps are still around, you know? Here's the thing. You need to know, though, Saturday night, well, it will start here. It's gearing us up for here, and Saturday night's going to move. It'll be over here. But we're going to start building serve teams. And so there's multiple ways that you can step in and be a part of serve teams for Prescott Valley. That'll also, as this takes off, create some new serve team opportunities here. And maybe God's calling you. Maybe he's been tugging at you for a while. Would you step up? Is there ways that you could serve here and now? But this is a massive leap of faith, family. Like, I'll be real honest with you, financially, pre-COVID, we were hitting all cylinders. We're not. And that's okay. Because God is God. And the same God that started over here is the same God carrying it over here. And he loves the people of Prescott Valley more than we ever will. And so we have an opportunity. You heard Zach reference whatever it takes, and you might be like, man, what is that? Whatever it takes is a campaign we launched about 2.5 years ago to help fund this vision. We thought right when COVID hit, we thought we'd be opening. We thought we would already be on our way. God had other plans, and we're grateful. God has brought new family members. And so today, we are asking, we are inviting, we are offering a moment for you to go, man, I want to be a part of that. I want to be a part of what God's up to. But I need to be clear, like we had a series on generosity, and we concluded that series talking about seed in your hand, that God's given you grain to plant. And I don't want the excitement of this to short circuit the growth of planting grain on a regular basis. And so if you're here and you're like, I don't even give, but I want to give, like if I can encourage you, create the rhythm of generosity in your life first. But if you're here and you have the means and you go, man, I want to give above and beyond to what this is, then we have ways for you to step in today. You can go to a website. That's an easy one. You hit Prescott Valley. You can figure it out on there. On the app, you open the app, and it's the very first thing you see. Click the picture, and it'll take you into all the ways you can serve and be involved, and then also how you can give. But if you're like me, and you're like, John, this was good, but I need more information. I need to understand, wrap my head around this a little bit. In the lobby today, we have people out there. We have brochures that you can pick up. We have all the information you want. They can answer any questions that clearly we didn't have time to get through here. But you can ask them today, and they'll help fill you in on that. But here's what I would love to do. Today's a day of celebration, but it's also a day of recognizing we are a family. And the family has a mission, and the mission is to go. So I'm going to ask you intentionally, how is God leading you to go? How's he leading you to step in with your life? We're called to do for others what's been done for us, make disciples. How are you making disciples? And then maybe this one question we'll just sit with for about 30 seconds. What does love require of you today? What does love require of you today? Specifically in the context of Prescott Valley, in the context of church family, in the context of baptism. Maybe love for you today is I just have never done this. I've been scared of it, and today's my day. I need to do that. We'll see you at the 12. You can ask people about it. They'll get you connected. But maybe on the Prescott Valley side, God's tugging at you in a different way today. He's calling you to step in. And so I'm going to give you about 30 seconds, and then I'll close in prayer. God, thank you for loving us. Thank you for rescuing us. Thank you for making us a family. Thank you for putting us in a place and giving us a purpose. God, I pray that over these next moments as we celebrate, that you would just cement in our hearts what we need to carry. Thank you for the excitement of what you're doing. Thank you for vision. Thank you for opening doors. Thank you for contracts being signed. Thank you for what it's going to mean as we step into new communities. God, we are so grateful that you even save us, let alone use us for your kingdom. So God, we just say thank you today. Thank you for everything that's happened. It's in your name. Everybody said.